Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Modern Customer Podcast. I am your host, Blake Morgan. Today, my guest is Jim Weber, the Executive Vice President, Chief Experience and Marketing Officer of Comerica Incorporated. He also serves as a member of Comerica's Management Executive Committee. Jim has been with Comerica since 2007. In 2020, his role was expanded to be the first customer experience officer and launched the customer experience management practice for the bank. Today, we're talking about measurement. We're talking about what you do as a CXO in your first 90 days. And we're talking about why it has never been more important, particularly in banking, to constantly be adding value to the customer's life. Please enjoy Jim Weber. Jim, welcome to the Modern Customer Podcast. Where are you calling us in from today?
I am calling you from Dallas, Texas.
Oh my goodness. I was just in Dallas because a good friend lives in South Lake and there's just a lot going on there. Do you like living in Texas?
I do. I live down in the southeast area near White Rock Lake. So I'm a big runner and that's very convenient. So I really enjoy it. It's an older neighborhood, lots of trees, which you can't always find in Texas. So yeah, I've been here for about 30, oh gosh, I hate to say this, 37 years and have really loved it down here.
Yeah, I was just in Austin like literally 3 days ago. And what impresses me about Texans is they just are not bothered by the heat. It does, in the summer it warms up and they're just jogging on the river. And I'm so spoiled living in California. I'm such a baby. I don't like to run when it's hot. But yeah, I mean, if it doesn't bother you, it's probably better for your body if you're running with a little humidity.
Yeah, it's certainly an adjustment though. I'm from New Jersey originally, so I have to say when I visit California, it's always a welcome relief to run out there. But we
Yeah.
always have a back and forth because half of my team is in Michigan and half is in Texas, and so we always are
Oh.
kind of wishing we were at the other place, depending on what time of the year it is.
Yeah, that's fun. Okay. Well, let's get into a little bit about the company before we talk about your role in customer experience. Very old company, long legacy. What does Comerica Bank mean to you? Just if we look at it from a modern lens, like what makes this brand different today?
I think the focus, sort of our unwavering focus on being, what we like to say, the leading bank for business. We have always been a commercially focused bank. And so, our sort of the heart of our business model is serving customers in that sort of 25 to $500 million range, what's generally referred to as middle market. And, so we've built up a great legacy of really knowing how to support those companies with a lot of very specific expertise, like learning industry specific, really understanding industry specific clients, knowing their unique needs. And then, the other part of Comerica has been just sort of having really long tenured bankers, folks who've been through the ringer, understand how to navigate the good times and the bad times. And so we find that to be, a great something great to fall back on, especially, when times do get tough. The fact of the matter is, we're really good at figuring out ways to work through those with our clients. And I think our clients appreciate that. And I think the loyalty our clients show to us is reflected in that.
Yeah. So did you join in 2007?
I did.
Okay. So right before the whole world exploded,
I,
basically.
I had a few months of thinking that banking was one thing, and then banking became something completely different after that. Yeah, so that was trial by fire and a really difficult time. But again, I go back to sort of our core business model. We're very risk averse. We're a very conservative bank. And that really served us well during that time because, I would say we're probably maybe one of the only banks who had never dabbled, even thought about dabbling in subprime mortgages, for instance. So, when that whole thing went down, we were well positioned. I'm not saying it was a fun time, but we were certainly better positioned to come through it because of that sort of conservative approach we've taken or had taken moving into that cycle. So, and it allowed us, I think, to navigate it better than most.
And so now we're sort of jumping ahead, but seeing what's happening now, I'm reading research online and articles that people are just very stressed, like across the board. they're losing work productivity. They're very worried about money. I think with technology, like we can feel kind of disconnected from it, but I think out there people are stressed. What's your read on what's happening today out in the economy with Americans?
Yeah, it is everything you're saying is true. So all the research would tell you, both proprietary stuff that we do as well as what you would read, generally from any of the analysts would tell you that, there's a lot of anxiety. You've got this, you've got, I think it started, you have the war with the Ukraine, which sort of contributed to this run up in inflation. You've got then rates responding, and then you've got this, right now where you and I are talking, and this debt ceiling is being negotiated. So, there are a lot of externalities that create, if you're a small business owner, for instance, and you're kind of thinking about what the next 6 months look like. Consumer sentiment, I think the release that came out on Friday indicated that had reached sort of some really low ebbs. So, if you're in that position of trying to run a small business, trying to thrive, you're looking at that, I think, with a lot of trepidation. And I would tell you that our folks we're very close to our customers. So, I think, we're hearing that as well. I think it's verified. So I think the next 3 or 4 months are going to be real telling in terms of what happens. We get through this debt crisis. How bad, if there's a recession, how bad will it be? Will inflation continue to come down? And those are just sort of the headlines you see in the paper every day, right? So I kind of always try to put myself in the customer's position and think, how do I make the next move? And again, I go back to sort of, you start to rely on your partners more. I think businesses like that are looking for their partners to add value. And that's kind of what I think we're good at.
Okay, so let's talk about customer strategy. You mentioned that you listen to your customers. You are the Chief Experience Officer. How long have you been in that role, and what does it look like at Comerica?
Yeah, so the customer experience management practice at Comerica was stood up in 2019. Prior to that, and I still hold the title of Chief Marketing Officer as well.
Okay.
But the CXO role was stood up, I think, precisely because we were looking for ways to codify some of the great things that we've always done, but maybe felt like we could do them more consistently by establishing processes around the customer and really being what we would call journey focused. So understanding the end-to-end experience and sort of knitting those together. So we felt like there was another level to achieve by establishing this practice, and it really does look at the complete picture. It's not just marketing. It's sales. It's technology. It's how do the systems behind the scene actually enable what has to happen for the customer to be happy, right? I mean, I think some of the mistakes that are often made are you just assume that on the surface level, if I just fix this for the customer and make them happy, that's great. But if there's a process connected to that down the line, like you don't have a certain technology that makes it easy, then that can be self-defeating. And I think we wanted to look at things a little more holistically, because it's one thing you can say, I've said this many times, you can have someone can walk into a banking center and have a great experience, but if they go home and they have to make a call to our call center and they have to wait for 5 minutes,
yeah,
what have you done? You've kind of negated all the the equity you build up by delivering such a great experience by in some other aspect of your business. You've now kind of like negated it, right? So we kind of try to look at things now a little more holistically, and again look at end to end from inception to creating loyal advocates and everything in between, looking at that holistically and saying here are the most important moments of truth that we have to focus on, and so that's kind of what the CXM practice I think is trying to bring to the table at Comerica.
All right, Jim. So I have to ask you, 2019 wasn't that long ago. So I imagine you remember the first 90 days of moving from CMO to, okay, now I'm doing both. Mm-hmm. Can you share with us what you did in those first 90 days as Chief Experience Officer?
Yeah, well, so it was late 2019. So if you go back and frame it, about 4 months later, we were in the throes of COVID, the first wave of COVID. So yeah, it was, I think it started with a lot of high hopes and plans and, kind of laying out like, here's how we're going to build the team and expand it. And the person who runs CX for us on a day-to-day basis, the director of CX is a woman named Maria Adams, brilliant, former brand director for me, moved her into this position because she has this sort of rare ability to kind of see everything and process it, and she's very strategic. And so put Marie in place. She had a couple people, and then COVID hit, and everything kind of like went, okay, stop, right? You've got about 18 months where I think every bank was kind of going, okay, we gotta hold. We have to see what's going to happen, make our way through it, get through PPP, get through all those other things. And so, in that time, I'd say Maria did a lot of really good work. We did a lot of good work by bringing in, building a best-in-class customer satisfaction measurement process that leverages the Medallia tool that, probably one of the two big tools that everybody in business uses. Yeah. So standing that up, that was important. I mean, having that intelligence to make these decisions in a more, sort of in a more consistent manner was really helpful. And then we really started to dig into using the CX function to bring greater focus on the retail side into our segmentation strategy, and diving deep into both our small business and our personal banking customers. What did that market? We hadn't done a segmentation in quite a while, so taking a fresh look at that, and then doing that in the context of what are now the emerging needs, and then how do we best segment. And we focused, how do we best segment the customer base, and we really focused more on, I would say, the attitudinal, because I like to joke, everybody talks about, well, we'll go after the mass affluent customer. It's like, okay, so you're a bank and you're going to go after people with money. It's got to be a little more insightful to make a connection. And so we were really looking for those, how do we find out that sweet spot about what, as a niche player, really, because that's what we are. How do we find the intersection between the folks who would be most enthusiastic for what we believe we bring to the table, which is, a more of a relationship focus, quite frankly, even more of a one-to-one focus historically, right? Notwithstanding what you have to do to provide technology solutions to folks. We were looking for that intersection. So CX played a really important role in getting that conversation moving, and getting to a point where, we now had a clear definition that everyone, sales, marketing, everyone in between, could understand this is who we're going after. And then the next big step on that is, so what do you do with that? Like, how do you begin to differentiate yourself? Because it's a commodity industry. I mean, no one needs another, we used to joke about, like, well, no one needs Bank of America Light, right? They've got Bank of America. So how do you stand out? And a lot of the, and so that whole process really sent us down a road of trying to figure out. I'm a big believer in, I was an ex-ad guy. So I did TV, I wrote TV commercials. I know all about the high level branding stuff, but I was more interested in how do we deliver real tangible value, because I think in this day and age, that's what people are expecting. They're kind of they see through the fluff. We all say we love our customers. Great. How do you prove it? And so that kind of sent us down this path of, especially on the small business side, trying to figure out what is it that we can offer that's going to really make a difference, and what is the real value that's going to deliver to them. And that's been the focus of a lot of the work. But it all stemmed from, I think, this increased focus on CX as a practice.
All right. Well, because you mentioned it, we have to talk about metrics. And you mentioned Medallia. When you start to talk about these kind of hardcore, like contact center measurement, people they're so hungry for this information. Could you just talk about how you decided to set up your metric system and what it looks like? And I'm hoping it's beyond NPS.
Yeah, it is. And we've talked a lot with a lot of our consultants too about what are the different ways that you want to, what are you going to put the emphasis on? And obviously NPS is what I would call, like, that's the master metric. That's the highest level. Our focus was on retail out of the gate. Really, the initial focus being the banking centers. We find that for us, we are still more banking center centric. It's not that all our customers don't have digital, but we find that sort of our best relationships are coming from those folks who want that extra level of care and face-to-face relationship. And so, we really wanted to understand and look at what is the experience like banking center to banking center, and then really leverage that information so that it's immediately actionable. by a manager, by a frontline sales staff who owns a relationship. If they're getting bad feedback, we need to be responding to that. So the system was set up to be both responsive, but also multi-tiered in a way that allowed the executive management can look at it, and they can look at NPS, and then they can kind of go one level down. But really where the rubber hits the road is the manager understanding and being able to synchronize what they know they're directing the staff to do and what is the reaction of the customer, and then looking at performance, on a relative basis from banking center to banking center, from region to region, and understanding where those differences are, who are the high performers. Again, we are a sales-driven organization more than marketing. And so the value there was, again, getting that information back to them so that they could get better and better and fine-tune what they're doing and create the right sales processes to have that, that constant optimization. So yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest benefit out of the gate from standing this up, and then then eventually expanding it to the other business units, and into the call center, and to every channel that we can. So, but I'd say that was, that part of it is maybe one of the most valuable things it does at Comerica.
Okay. And the next question I have for you is something that I'm really focused on right now, and I'm just very interested in leadership. So the question is, how often are you or the CEO working with the front line, talking to customers, calling customers? What does that look like?
Yeah, we just went through an exercise of defining our core values for our company, and one of them is the customer comes first. And it's not that was very thoughtful, like getting to that, but it was one of the more unanimous ideas. So this emphasis on really making sure that we're available to our customers, that we're proactively reaching out to them, that we're adding value to their lives. In other words, it's not a call to try to sell the next thing, right? That's not a relationship. A relationship is listening. Okay, what's going on? Hey, I know you're in this particular line of industry. Here's an article that we just saw. You may not have seen it, but I think it really applies to you. It's about, and yeah, if I can go all the way up to my CEO, Kurt Farmer, who is constantly meeting with our larger customers, our larger commercial banking customers, very much available. Our market presidents, my boss, the chief revenue officer, chief banking officer, Peter Sefcik, our leadership's extraordinarily available to our customers. And so, that is something that, leading by example, that availability, and I think is important. And I think you see it if you ask people about our CEO and you ask people about our leadership, is that accessibility is like gold. When you know that you can get that level of access, and our customers, right? Our customers are like, oh my God, the CEO called me. That's not something that's going to happen everywhere. And I would point you to this idea that we've talked a lot about, especially recently, is this sweet spot that Comerica and other regional banks sit in, which is like, we use this term, big enough to matter, small enough to care. So, we can actually operate at the level of a large bank, but the way we do it is much more personalized. And so I think that's something that we've emphasized and been able to deliver on, is sort of that best of both worlds concept. So yeah, and we rely on that, I think, really heavily, because it speaks to what we do well.
Okay, but is that an operationalized strategy? Is that formal? Does the CEO make visits once a month, or is it more just as needed?
It's interesting. I wouldn't say that there's a formal program, but it's so institutionalized in the way we do business. And even our Kurt's predecessor, Ralph Babb, that was just expected, right? I've known a lot of the different market presidents, and if you were to look at their routines as far back as I can remember, and that's only 16 years, that is just what they're expected to do. That's just built into our culture. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's like there's a formal, the CEO calling program, but it's a lot of his time, a lot of our CEO's time, a lot of our market presidents' time is actually supporting frontline staff and getting out there and having those conversations and making themselves available, because, again, that's kind of what we're all about, what we should be all about, right?
Okay, great. What advice do you have for other chief experience officers that perhaps are having trouble politically inside the organization getting the support that they need to move their programs forward? Is there something that you've learned that you would recommend other CXOs start to do?
Yeah, well, there's always there's the age old sort of how do you get finance on board, and there are really focusing on how you can build business cases around a good CXM program. A lot of that I think ends up falling in maybe more in the category of loyalty and perhaps cross sell, but looking at customer longevity and being able to kind of link what you're doing and the results of that. It is something that you should definitely always be thinking about. I think you just have to I would say this. I would say that if I were to look back on it, probably could have done a better job of really immersing the business unit leaders in the concept a little more. There was a general agreement, but I think that I could have done a better job educating and laying the groundwork before a lot of these things went into place. And that doesn't mean they haven't worked but CX is that kind of a weird term within the business, right? Because I think if you go and talk to folks, for instance, in the technology division, they have a whole idea of what CX is, and it's valid, but it really is very much within the tech world. Like CX as part of a digital journey is valid, but more narrow. I look at CX as being all encompassing, right? I'm looking at the total experience, multi-channel, everything that we do. And so I think when people start hearing that internally, they'll hear CX mentioned in one context and then CX mentioned in another. And I think that there's still a little bit of, I kind of get it, but I don't fully get it. And how is that different than marketing? And how is that different than sales? So I would say that really making sure that you've got a strong change management program in place if you're going to implement something like that is important, so that there's the right level of education, ongoing communication, the right level of training around it. And we've gotten there, but it's probably, I would say probably, we could have gotten there faster if we had maybe more emphasis in those areas.
All right, so maybe you wish the communication, or you're saying the communication with the business managers and educating the other leaders is so important. Like, what actually is customer experience, and what is your role in actually, you're a CX leader too, even though you might be head of small business or head of marketing.
Right.
Okay,
yeah, it touches everything, right? I mean, the idea that if you're going to have this full view, then of what the customer is going through, for instance, we've got tools, we've got Salesforce,
right?
And look, as with every company, usage of Salesforce is somewhat inconsistent. And so getting people to understand, here's why you use this, here's why it improves the customer experience, because we're feeding you, data-driven insights, next best offer. It could be distributed marketing of, value-added content, whatever it is. But if the people aren't using the system, then that's just kind of going into a hole, right? Now, we're steadily making progress. We've got adoption, but I think there's another level of education that could go on in terms of understanding how, like, a tool that everyone is supposed to be using every day, like Salesforce, can then be the next level catalyst to help them. I would say the blessing and the curse of a really highly experienced, long tenured banking organization is that these people are really successful and they're very, very good at what they do. And so I think what you're constantly looking to do is say, okay, don't lose that, but these new tools can help you do it even better. And, like as within all organizations, there's resistance to change, and folks who've done things a certain way for, maybe 20 or 30 years, that's going to be a steeper climb than someone who's new to the business and much more sort of open to, using technology as a tool, right? So you have to constantly navigate through the organization and find ways to get followership where it may be challenged, because why change it if it's not broken? And you get back to education. Well, not saying change the good stuff, but here, if you added this, it could actually expand your capacity. It could make your life easier. You could save time. Those are the types of conversations that, I think go on constantly within the organization. And for us as a marketing department, I would say half of our job at Comerica is sales enablement. It's figuring out how to get the right information, the right data into the hands of the frontline staff, so it saves them time, it makes them smarter, it adds value to their customers' relationship. And I'd say we spend at least half our time doing that. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah, so you're basically saying one of the big challenges is just getting the sales staff to not hoard data in a way and use Salesforce and input everything properly.
Yeah, I don't know if there's hoarding as much as there is everybody has their way of doing it. Everybody
Right.
relies on a certain method, right? So if you're used to just going out and Googling companies and doing it that way, and we come in and say, well, you should try to do it this way, that's just kind of getting to an understanding of what the value is. Because in the end, obviously the system is only as good as its users. It's only going to be as powerful as the information that goes into it, and that's a two-way street. We can analyze. I have a great data analytics team, and they can tell you, they can do the probability modeling and say, here, this is your next. These are the 10 most likely customers who are going to buy this or who are going to be open to this, to this product. They need it. It appears based on our modeling that they need it, and so, but if you put that information in the system, and even if someone uses the information, if they don't go back in and say what happened, right? What was the result of that sales call? Did we move the ball along? Was it rejected? Did we make an appointment? That's the data that makes the data better and lets it feed on itself and gets us more efficient. And so getting folks to understand why it's so important for everyone to participate in that ecosystem, I think is, that. And look, 8,000 people, that's a lot of people, right? To all get on the same page. It takes time. And I think we're making progress. I know leadership is very supportive of it. We all, believe in it, but that's different than sort of the day-to-day getting people to actually, getting people to gauge on a consistent basis. But I think the spirit is willing, definitely.
All right. All right, Jim. So it's time to get to know you a little bit better before we say goodbye. Are you ready to take some rapid fire questions?
I am, and I hope I'm able to rapidly respond. So
Yeah. All right. Question number one. What does your morning routine look like?
get up around 5:30, go running anywhere from 8 to 10 miles. That just depends on the heat
Yeah.
and the humidity. And then come back during the school year. That involves me driving my daughter to high school. She goes to high school 3 blocks from where I work, so that's very convenient. And 2 cups of coffee in there somewhere, and I'm good to go.
All right. What do you do to relax at the end of a hectic day?
My wife and I, we just moved into a new house, and we built it exactly the way we knew we would enjoy it. So a lot of it is on the back porch by the pool, sometimes with a glass of wine. She's also in marketing. She's a CMO as well, and so we always have a lot to talk about, and it's good to be able to to kind of talk through your challenges and your successes with someone who completely understands that. So.
That's awesome. What is one mental health strategy for managing hard days?
The world isn't going to end
Right.
because of anything you do. And I tell my kids this as well when they get uptight about like taking a test or anything. But in the end, you won't remember it. You won't remember any of it. So why twist yourself into knots? So always trying to step back, take another step back and another step back to understand the perspective of it, and maintain the right perspective in terms of the balance between your work life and your personal life, and know which of those is the most important.
All right. What is your favorite type of vacation?
Beach, definitely beach. So.
If you could have lunch with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh man, that's such a good question. Dead or alive? I'm going to say this is going to be really obscure, and I'm not trying to be There's a guy named Noam Chomsky, and he's an
Yeah.
intellectual. And I read his stuff voraciously, and he's sort of my dinner party. And then I'll say one more, Dave
Mhm.
Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. All right, great. If you had to describe your outlook in one quick motto, what would it be?
Always do what's best for the greater good.
Love that.
Really concentrate and understand that anytime I've seen someone do something out of selfishness, it never works out. It never works out, either for our customers or for the team. So always try to put others in front of yourself. And I think that idea of servant leadership is kind of what I would like to think I do. I may miss sometimes, but definitely my aspiration.
It sounds like game theory, which my dad's always reminded me about. He's like, you got to do what's best for you and the group. So I try
Yeah,
and
there is a
tell
lot of that in
my
there.
kids
Yeah.
that too. I'm like, remember. Anyway, they're really little, so these are the conversations we're having, trying to inspire greatness in little kids.
That's
But
right.
Jim, it's been really fun having you on the podcast. Really appreciate all your insights and taking my questions, and hopefully you'll come back at another time soon.
I'd love to. Thank you for having me.
All right, and everybody, you have been tuning into the Modern Customer Podcast. Until next time.